Join Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, on a journey into creativity and transformation. Each episode, Marc and his guests explore the intersection of science and spirituality to uncover ways to live a more inspired life. Together, we'll navigate both the seen and unseen realms to spark joy and personal growth. This is a community where you are empowered to discover the diamond within. Marc is an award-winning psychic medium, decorated veteran, and teacher based in Seattle. Using his intuitive gifts, he guides the curious on profound soul adventures. Now, here is your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector.
All right. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful, transformative planet of ours. This is Inspired Living. I am your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. And as you can see, we have, after many seasons of Inspired Living being just audio, we have made the big leap into the studio of Om Times Television. So thank you to Chris, my producer at Om Times, my team, for putting this all together and getting us on the air live here in the studio. And this is going to be the show format moving forward for Inspired Living, but you'll also get the podcast wherever you get your podcast from in the audio setting. So we like to say you are both the inspiration and the inspired. So let's embrace this journey together. Let's inspire others, and let's make every moment count before we expire. Each moment is a chance to ignite your passion and explore your curiosities here on Inspired Living, and embrace the wonders of our world, both the ordinary and the extraordinary. Like I said, I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. You can learn more about me at marclainhart.com. And I'm thrilled to guide you on what I like to call soul adventures, filled with inspiration, discovery, mysticism, the unknown. And together, we're going to uncover the unique diamonds within each and every one of us and the many hidden gems waiting to shine in our lives and in the world. Whether you're at home, on the road, or wherever life takes you, this show is crafted to uplift your spirit and to empower your dreams. Inspired Living is about building a supportive community where we celebrate every victory, no matter how big or how small. And each episode, like the one we're going to have today, features incredible guests who have faced challenges, pursued their passions, and made positive impacts in our world in their respected fields. And this guest is going to be returning for a second time here on Inspired Living. And you can expect, like I said, engaging discussions, thought-provoking ideas, different perspectives, actionable steps. I think that's the most important thing. Actionable steps of how to transform and manifest inspiration into your own reality, something that I have been working on for many, many years. And I always want to say, always give a huge thank you and inspirational thank you and gratitude, and very humbled to what we call our inspired listeners and the inspired listening community around the globe. Your support over the years through listening, downloading, subscribing, leaving reviews, has made Inspired Living podcast now a best inspirational, a best spiritual, and recently added to that list is a best introspective podcast to listen to. And we are truly humbled and grateful for each and every one of you for turning into the live shows that are now streaming through the Om Times network channels, my Intuitive Prospector page on Facebook, and my YouTube channel as well. And of course, if you have not subscribed or followed us yet, there's always time to do so. You can connect with us over on a few different platforms through social media. We're on a few different platforms. The first one is Inspired Living. That's our global community on Facebook. We're also on Instagram, Blue Sky, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Just look for our name, Inspired For Us. Now I can actually hold up my fingers and say For Us, because on the audio version, it used to be, I had to say it out, Inspired For Us, the number 4. So just getting used to this new Om Times television format. You can also check us out over on our YouTube channel, Inspired Living. And we're also now streaming through Audible, through Alexa, and wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. And we hope that Inspired Living can make that list for you as we move steady along into 2026. So let's get ready to be inspired, uplifted, motivated, because I always say the best is always yet to come. So let's go prospecting together through what I like to call body, mind, and spirit. And we've gotten this book. This is actually the follow-up. This guest has been on, Mr. John Purkiss. This is his book, and I'm glad I can show it now. Before I used to just talk about it, and we're going to bring him on in just a second. I'm going to give a little background of John's journey. Like I said, he was before. This is his follow-up book, and we'll make reference to his other book as well. But this is what we're going to be talking about, which is the power of moving on, letting go. Which is sold over 250,000 copies. So we're excited how to let go and live the life you want. So bear with me today because I'm not used to showing stuff on video. This is our first time doing this. But let me just read a little bit about John's journey and a little bit about him and his background. So he studied economics at Cambridge University, and he has an MBA, a Master of Business Administration from INSEAD. He began his career in banking and management consulting in London and Chicago, and he worked in sales and marketing in the UK and the continental Europe. John then learned to meditate, which made his intuition much stronger, which I can totally get that. And it enabled him to move into what we call executive search. And since 2014, he's explored the Vedic tradition in depth. And again, you can get his information all off of our show pages. You can also go to johnpurkiss.com. And I just want to read a little bit about the book is what do I want? Why don't I have it? And how can I make it happen? And that's what we're going to talk about today in the power of moving on, the highly anticipated follow-up to the power of letting go, which we did a couple seasons ago. And again, like I said, it's sold over 250,000 copies in the English language to date. And it's really, reading through it, it's taught us how to drop anything from the past that was holding us back and to be fully present and surrender. And John likes to say, quote, I help people to fulfill their potential, end quote. And so with that, I would like to welcome for the first time our first Om Times Television studio guest, Mr. John Purkiss. Hello, my friend.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for inviting me back. Very kind of you.
Yeah, so as you can see, we've upgraded. We're in the studio together now. It used to be just the audio format, and now we're doing the video. So tell us, since the last time we talked, it was a couple of seasons ago that you came on with your follow-up or your first book, and this is the follow-up book. And again, I'll just keep showing it on the video because I can do that now versus just a podcast. But just tell us a little bit about your journey, because you talked about going deeper into your meditative journey and really kind of unfolding some things that are pretty interesting.
Yeah, where would you like me to start? In the journey?
Oh, in a galaxy far, far away. No, wherever you want to start, my friend.
Okay, well, I'll make it concise. So, so thank you for describing my background. So I learned what most people would call mindfulness by accident while reading a novel, and that's when I learned to be present, like keep returning to the now. So that was the first point. The second point was a few years later, I learned transcendental meditation, which many people have learned. And that's when I started experiencing downloads. It was just when I was starting to write books, and I would just sit there and ideas would just download because, in many types of silent meditation, there are periods where there are no thoughts. And I meditate 2 or 3 times a day, and I just sit there. And when there are no thoughts, suddenly something just downloads. I would imagine in terms of creativity, many people experience this. You don't have to be an author. I mean, there are entrepreneurs and singers, songwriters and musicians, all kinds of people have downloads. And sometimes it's just a solution to a problem. And you may not be meditating. You may be doing the dishes or running or taking a shower, right? So I experienced all of that. And then I went along the track further and further. And what I realized was a lot of meditators are still stuck. So I met all these people who were meditating and they felt blissful twice a day, but some of them were broke and some of them were ill and some of them, were having relationship. Like no one had it all together exactly the way they wanted. And I met my guru, Sri Nityananda Paramashivam, nearly 12 years ago. And the reason I connected with him was I realized he had the solution. He had a way of removing the obstacles. So when I did Freudian psychoanalysis a long time ago when I had clinical depression in my 20s. And, so you identify all the problems, but there was no solution apart from talking for a few more years, right? In those days, right? So what I realized was what I learned from him was there are specific patterns running your life, and it's like software. And that's what in the new book, we go deeply into that. Like there are 5 or 6 patterns running your life. So a very common one is it's impossible. So let's imagine that you're raising money for a company, or you're trying to climb a high mountain, or I don't know, have a child at a certain age, or whatever it is, and you have this deep-seated belief that it's impossible for you, right? That is a major obstacle, and people have 5 or 6 of them. I found all of mine, and then if you relive the original incident intensely, those patterns become redundant. In fact, I find it quite hard to remember them. Sometimes I look in my own book to remind myself what they are. But you see what I'm saying? Imagine you've got 5 or 6 patterns which are running your life, and you basically make those redundant, and you automatically effectively adopt new patterns which are very, very empowering. So one of my favorite cognition, if you like, one of my favorite cognitions is it's all happening, right? Or life is constantly supporting me. If you believe that life is constantly supporting you, or the universe is constantly supporting you, things obviously happen much more easily than if you believe it's impossible. And we can basically work on these beliefs in a very straightforward way. And it's not affirmations, because affirmations can be like putting a carpet on a wound. There's still a festering wound underneath. You actually have to take out the negative stuff, and then you can be as positive as you like, because you've cleaned out the mess, right?
Yeah, emptying that glass, and so you can make room for new.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, you don't want all the poison in the glass. You got to clean that out.
Right, you got to clean it out. You got to dump it out. Clean. It's like cleaning the wound, right? If you don't clean the wound, infection, that leads to bigger things. So, so for the listeners that are tuning in, John, because not everybody comes to this. I found in doing this for many seasons that many people usually have a situation, whether it's loss, whether it's living with loss, whether it's a near death, whether it's a loss of a marriage or loss of something that brings them into that spiritual awakening. For you to write 2 brilliant books, and again, congratulations on over 250,000 copies. Congratulations on that. But what brought you to this awakening? What brought you to the spiritual awakening, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I can tell you, yeah. And by the way, for those people listening, I mean, it may not feel like it, like bereavement or losing a job or whatever. But actually, these painful events in our lives are, when you look back, you'll see that there was a blessing within that situation. And the blessing is that you're effectively being shown a doorway to a new life. So take my case, right? So I had a super conventional upbringing. I got the message. A lot of us get the message early on. If you want to be loved, you have to work hard. So I worked hard at school and did well in my exams and got to Cambridge and all this. And so until I was 25, my success formula was all about being intelligent and hardworking. And then at 26, it stopped working and I was suicidally depressed. So it was a horrible experience, right? But now I see it as a blessing, because it showed me that you can only get so far with your mind. Like, the mind is a useful tool, but it won't get you all the way. At some point, you have to go beyond the mind. And, some people, there's no judgment about this. Some people can keep going until their 50s or 60s before they hit the buffers, right? Some people hit the buffers very early. But at some point, the cosmos or the universe is showing you, hey, you need to do something new here, because this old formula isn't working anymore. A very common one, I see it because I've recruited a lot of senior executives. You imagine how most of us start out. Like, you might start a family or have a business or become more senior at work. And actually, as your responsibilities grow, if you only use your mind, life is going to get harder and harder. Because you have to deal with more and more people and more resources and more complication. And so eventually the mind just overloads.
And for you though, what was that? Was it a certain situation for you? Just
yes, it was.
That download, you talked about the download. Just one day you're like, okay, enough of this. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to have a spiritual awakening. I'm going to write a bunch of books.
I can tell you that now, which some people listening will relate to. So obviously a lot of children are creative and intuitive. I used to write poetry and do paintings and all of that. Then you go through the educational sausage machine, and you become more and more sort of how should I put it, conditioned and analytical. So when I came out of business school, I got first prize at business school. So I have this certificate saying, you're intelligent and hardworking. and I was like an analytical machine. And so I would analyze everything. And I really wanted to be either an investment manager or an executive search consultant, a headhunter, right? A recruiter. Okay. And I realized, to do that, you need really strong intuition. And my intuition had kind of died through all this analysis, right? I used to analyze everything. Sure. So then I realized, okay, so I'm perfectly equipped to do jobs I don't want to do, like highly analytical jobs like investment banking or management consulting. I tried those, that's not for me. And then the things I really wanted to do, I realized I couldn't do them because I had no intuition. That's when I got depressed. It's like, I've gone up the wrong ladder. This story of you go up, you get to the top of the ladder and realize it's the wrong wall. Mm-hmm. So I felt completely stuck. And then within a short period, I was suicidal. I went to see 3 doctors and psychiatrists, and they all went down their flow chart and said, you have clinical depression, right? So you can have drugs, therapy, or electric shocks. What would you like?
Right. Pick your poison.
I can laugh about it now. But anyways, but this is the breakthrough is sometime later, I mentioned this in the book, I was in Paris. And, I've read quite a lot of American self-help books, and it was like that, right? So I had this perfect resume on the one hand. On the other hand, I was in Paris. So my relationship was coming to an end. I had sciatica. I was somewhat depressed. I couldn't pay the rent or the grocery bills. And then I realized, okay, so on paper, I've done everything perfectly. So, 10 out of 10 for effort, 0 out of 10 for results. And on the one hand, it was deeply depressing. On the other hand, I thought, it's a bit like I've missed something fundamental. It's like, you haven't switched your computer on.
Right.
And what I did it intuitively, actually, because I'm sure like a lot of people listening to this, I was brought up as a Christian. So I had 10 years of Christianity. In the end, I couldn't handle the heaven and hell thing, but I did come away with the understanding there's something very intelligent running everything, right? Which you might call God, but basically there's something extremely clever happening. And so what I did was I let go. I just kept returning to the present, doing basic mindfulness. And then I let go and I asked to be guided. Like, okay, I can't figure this out intellectually. Please guide me. And a few days later, an advertisement appeared in the newspaper. So I started buying British newspapers in Paris, right? And a few days later, the perfect job appeared in the newspaper and I got it.
Okay.
And it was really spooky. There were, from memory, there were like 5. Later on, I found a memo written by the chairman of the company, and it was one of those magical, mystical things. He actually set out 5 criteria for the perfect candidate. I was the perfect candidate. Like I met all of the criteria perfectly, and he was in London, I was in Paris. So I changed industry, I changed location, I changed everything. It all worked perfectly, and I realized, hey, that was something very clever that I don't understand. that was magic, right?
Yeah.
Then obviously the next thing is, okay, how do I live like that all the time? Because this is amazing, right? And it's taken me some time to realize how you live like that all the time, and that's also covered in the book, which is by surrendering. So when you surrender in the correct way, you can live this way all the time. I mean, I've had magical things happen today. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah. And that awareness, right? Eckhart totally talks about awareness is the greatest agent for change. And Thank you for sharing that with the listeners, because, you said something about analysis. We have, we're such creatures of wanting to have knowledge, and the ego drives that in the material world, right? And, sometimes that analysis, we used to say, in a former life, business world, paralysis through analysis, that there was so much analysis that you actually paralyzed yourself and forward. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I got to do something different, in a very, I'm sure a very dark day for your journey, but it's that breakdown that leads to the breakthrough. Right. And, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and all of a sudden you're in you get a job through a newspaper. You're looking at going to a different location. That is the transformation of awakening. It's the caterpillar to the butterfly approach, right? So, so thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for the listeners. Now, in this book, we had you on before to talk about the power of letting go, right? Because it's that old adage, hold on and get dragged, or let go and be free. And then you followed it up with, how to let go and live the life you want through this very easy read. It's a very easy read for the listeners out there. The power of moving on. Any reason for? I'm always curious, like a wine label or a bottle of wine. Why do you put what you put on your covers? What's the bird represent for you?
It's a very good question. So Octopus Books, the publisher, they're a subsidiary of Hachette, second biggest publisher in the world, and they insisted on the title, and they came up with the illustration. And I'm sitting there like a year ago thinking, hold it, what does this title? I knew what I wanted to write, but I didn't understand the title.
Sure.
And then I just got to work, and then eventually it dawned on me. And I suppose for me, the bird, the swallow is. Swallows go pretty quickly and effortlessly, right? They swoop around. They don't do analytical struggle and effort.
True.
Was the butterfly was like coming out of the chrysalis. Now it's moving swiftly from A to B. And a lot of teachers in the Vedic tradition have talked about. They talk about things being effortless. I mean, that doesn't mean you don't do anything. It's just there isn't this struggle anymore. It's kind of joyful,
right?
Yeah.
Like you said, going with the flow, going with the universe working, and a lot of times it's just getting out of our own way.
Exactly. And then I've got a photo here. This is my guru in his 20s, right? And he has this amazing artificial intelligence which I use a lot. And recently he's been beating me over the head because I talk about going with the flow, and he says you are the flow, right? Like there's no separation.
Yeah.
You are the flow, not go with the flow. So a lot of us,
true.
A lot of us, we still see ourselves as a bit separate. And I keep getting beaten over the head. No, you are the flow. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and that's the old adage: the lesson repeats until it completes, and what we resist persists, right? And
exactly.
there is a lot of truth. I've even in my own spiritual journey, which opened up 2 decades ago. I've been working a lot with different plant medicines, which has opened me up to that being part of the flow, not going with the flow. You are the flow. You are part of something bigger, whether you want to call that, I don't try to define what God is anymore. I know that, like you said, there is something after life. Some call it the afterlife, heaven, God, but there is a consciousness, and it's a loving consciousness that's available after this physical journey ends. That's the one thing that it's taught me. And then we're going to go to our first break here in just a few minutes, John. But before we do that, let's jump into the book. I marked a couple chapters that I really enjoyed, especially about choosing your words carefully. And I think that's very important for the listeners out there because, thoughts become words, words become energy and vibration. Those words also become your habits lead to your destiny. In the book, you talk about, I'll just so I can read it, choose your words carefully. And then you go on to explain the book. Tell us a little bit about why words are so very vital to this journey of who we are.
Can you give me the context exactly? Because there's a lot to say about that. But
yeah, I'm happy to. Let's see. So it talks about the cosmos responds to your thoughts. You're talking about a download. You're talking about the meditation, sitting in the silence. And Rumi talked about that. Lao Tzu talked about that a lot of times. But your thoughts, your words, your actions, and if you declare, let me manifest X, the cosmos says, so be it. And your desire starts to materialize, what we call manifestation, intention to manifestation, based on thoughts and words, because really your words are your thoughts coming out into reality, right? You create, your focus determines your reality. So that context is what
that context. So there's a great Sanskrit word, which is tatastu, which is like, so be it. When you see the symbol, I love that emoji with the two hands. Where you say, so be it, blessings, right? So if you say, here's the simplest example. If you say, I want $1 million, and the cosmos says, you're right, you want $1 million. Nothing happened.
There you go. Right.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So the cosmos is agreeing with you, right? Like, and whereas if you say, let me manifest $1 million, you're already moving, right? So a lot has been written about this, but the basic point is that the cosmos, and that includes you and your body and everybody around you, is responding to your words literally. So if you say, I want a better life. Yeah, you're right. You want a better life. Sure thing. So we, whereas if you say, for example, if someone says to me, right, for example, we're building a temple in London, right? If I say I want to build a temple, okay, I'm back in the wanting mode, right? If I say I'm manifesting a temple, that has a completely different effect. Right, including on the people who might contribute. Like, imagine you're raising money. You say, if you say I want to start a company versus I am launching a company, the impact on you and everybody around you is completely different, right? Because it's already manifesting, and that you can apply that to health. You could say I've got a broken leg, or you could say my leg is healing. I mean, both are true.
Yeah. I can actually relate to what you just said, because over this last 18 months, I've had several surgeries, and my mantra, because I know that words matter and I know thoughts matter. And my mantra was always, is this happening to me or is this happening for me? Right? Because the to me is the victim mentality of, oh, this happened to me, have to get a new back, knee, etc. Versus, no, this is happening for me, so I can continue on with my life for the next, however many years I have left, but doing it in a healthy way. And so that's where, for me, and the listeners, and I just wanted to reiterate that your thoughts are very, very powerful, because thoughts become words, and it's that energy, the words that you're saying, like you said, intention to manifestation, and how you present it and how you say it, is it happening to me, is it happening for me, are completely two different energy wavelengths, if you will. Yeah,
you can feel it. I mean, it's right about the wavelengths. You can feel it in your body. If you listen carefully to what you're saying, it feels different.
Yeah, and I think, as we move forward in this very crazy time in history, I call it the roaring 20s of transformation and ascension. Everything now from, AI to robotics to algorithms to even now we can include aliens and extra dimensional beings, stuff that I've been talking about for several years, right?
They arrived.
They have arrived. Yeah, no, that's definitely big news that's come out, disclosure. But, one of the things I think is going to see the future is going to be based on energy and that frequency and the vibration. Many things that the gurus, Nikola Tesla talked about this when he was working with energy, that it's going to, including medicine, is going to have a lot to do with sound vibration and energy vibration, and even just our brain and how our brain is wired. So we're going to go to our first break, and we're going to come back here in just a few minutes. But we have our special guest today, John Purkiss, who is a returning guest of Inspired Living. He is the author of The Power of Moving On. If you want to learn more about his journey and the book, the beautiful book that he's written, The Power of Moving On, you can go to johnpurkiss.com. You can also get all of his information off our social media platforms. And when we return, we're going to pick up this conversation with our first episode of Om Times Television, and looking forward to continuing this chat with you, John, on this brilliant book that you've written, The Power of Moving On. So stick around. We're going to be right back here in just a few minutes.
Om Times TV. Billions of people walk this earth, yet there is only one you. Life offers endless connections, lessons, and moments of awakening. Are you ready to explore the beauty of this world, the healing energy that surrounds you, and your own soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, known as the Intuitive Prospector, is a trusted guide on that path. An internationally recognized psychic medium, medical intuitive, and spiritual advisor, Marc blends experience with heart-centered insight. From decorated veteran and first responder to teacher, minister, author, podcast host, and mentor, his journey has been one of service and discovery. His mission is simple: to help you awaken, heal, grow, and uncover the diamond within while discovering the hidden gems life has placed around you. Dare to explore. Dare to rise. Learn more at marclainhart.com and discover the Intuitive Prospector online.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
All right, welcome back to Inspired Living. I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. We are coming to you live through the Om Times channel television network. We will still be a podcast. You can still get the podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast or podcasting platforms. Our special guest today is John Purkiss, author of The Power of Moving On. I get to show the book. I get to see my guests. I've been doing this for 11 seasons, and this is the first time I'm actually getting to interact my guests live through the video format. So John, welcome back to Inspired Living. I wanted to start the second half off by a quote from Robert Frost, and it says, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. But as we do this journey, how can we make this life a little bit easier, a little bit, many roads to navigate, especially with everything that's going on. There's a lot going on in our world. It's almost like drinking from a fire hose of information. But for the book itself, in the book you talked about, I want to make sure I'm getting this right. You talked about the word unclutching. And, rather than simply letting go, what does unclutching mean to you?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're fine.
Yes, certainly. This is really important and useful. So, and I learned this from my guru, Sri Nityananda Paramashivam, and he introduced this technique, and it's incredibly simple. So, we can do this together, right? So when a thought appears, so you're just sitting there, right, and you have a thought, right? A thought appears. What do you typically do when you have the thought?
Well, for me, I write it down because I get lots of thoughts, right? So for me, I'm either say it into my phone as a voice recording, or literally I have a piece of paper ready to write down. That's how I work.
Great. So if it's an idea or something, you write it down. Okay. Yeah. What about when you just keep having thoughts all day long? What do you do with those?
I actually try to be an audience to what thoughts am I thinking? Right. One of my mentors have taught me, like, am I watching the same movie over and over again, the same thought over and over again, or am I challenging myself to look at new ways of thinking? Yeah.
So that's great. So you observe them and you see what's going on. What most people do, and this is an unconscious choice, what most people do is they engage with the thought. So let's imagine you have a negative thought. What most people do is they will engage with it in some way. So they might, for example, they might follow the thought and have another thought and another thought and another thought, and pretty soon they're miles away, or they're in the past or the future, right? They just follow one thought after another. That's one thing that happens. Another thought is that they have this thought and then they start analyzing it. Maybe it's a negative thought, feels like a problem, they start analyzing it. Or my sort of private joke about English men is we're world champions at suppressing thoughts. So if you enjoy, if you know Basil Fawlty in Fawlty Towers, or Mr. Bean, these comedians, and a lot of it is about suppression, right?
Right.
They have all this anger and they suppress it, and that's what makes it funny, right? Or another thing that we do is we make a joke about it, right? So we have a thought and then we turn it into a joke. We deflect it in some way. So the point is that most of us unconsciously choose to engage with a thought. But there's another choice that we can all make, which is not to engage with the thought, and hence unclutching. It's like, like a stick shift gearbox. Is you can either grind along, engaging with all the thoughts that happen, or you can disengage. And when the thought comes, you just do nothing. You stand back from it, and at some point it disappears, and another thought comes, and you stand back from that, and another thought comes, and you stand back from that. So it starts off as a practice. You're unclutching, you're disengaging, right? From every thought that comes up. And at first, at least for me, at first it felt like lazy. Well, surely I should be thinking a lot. Like if I have thoughts, I should be dealing with them, right? But you're not. You just choose not to engage. And you can do it as a meditation practice. It's even easier than mindfulness. You just sit there with your eyes closed comfortably. And every time a thought comes up, you just stand back from it. You just disengage and you just keep doing it, keep doing it. And after a while, what happens, I encourage anyone listening to try this for themselves. After a while, you find yourself in this kind of empty space. And of course, you'll have thoughts and you might start to engage with them, but then you can disengage, you can unclutch again. And if you keep doing this consistently, the results are amazing, because if you think about it, the way, you know, we all have a mind which keeps wandering away. We all have a body, but both of those things keep changing, right? Because we have different thoughts, cells in our body come and go, etc. But underneath all of this, there's this consciousness which is always there. And so another example is, well, you know, you're in Seattle, you know, you go to the top of a mountain and it's so beautiful. I would imagine you've had this experience. You go to the top of a mountain, it's so beautiful that your mind shuts up, right? If only for a few seconds. And then, I mean, have you had that experience? You live in a beautiful place.
Well, it's funny that you say that, just because I just literally got back from, not here in Seattle, but I actually flew down to Utah and went through the Zion National Park. Right. Zion is a very spiritual place, and we went to a very, very top part of the mountain and just reflected. And also, you know, we're in a state of grief, so we let a fur baby family member return back over the Rainbow Bridge at the top of this hike. But yeah, there was a lot of just taking in the view and just being in that silence. Yeah, just literally just like last weekend.
Oh wow, I'm sorry to hear about that. So does that mean that did your mind start to go quiet?
It did, and that was the intention. I know that nature for me is my religion, right? And, right. Getting back out into nature to honor grief or just to heal, but also to just calm the mind, to reduce that noise. Because, you know, my teachers have taught me along the way, if you can get to that place without any thought, yeah, there's where you're starting to reach that enlightenment stage. But even with enlightenment, you still got to take the garbage out. There's still things that, yeah. But yeah, I see what you're saying as far as just that silent moment, if even just for a few seconds.
Yes. So I have met people who say that they can't remember when they stopped having thoughts. those people exist. But a lot of us, we have had that kind of top of the mountain experience. And of course, you know, in my case, I remember it quite clearly. You're on top of the mountain. It's incredibly beautiful. Your mind goes quiet. And then within a few seconds, your mind starts comparing this mountain with some other mountain or wondering if you've brought the right sandwiches for lunch, or, you know, what's happened to my camera, you know. But back to the technique, or the principle of unclutching is you can live your whole life this way. So I'm pretty much unclutched all the time. And what happens is your mind automatically clutches. It automatically engages when it needs to. So let's imagine you're on top of this mountain and it's beautiful, and your mind goes quiet. At some point, you're going to need to look at the map, right? Or you're going to need to pay attention to something, and then your mind focuses on that, and then it unclutches again. Like, the point is, we don't need to be having thoughts all the time. It's exhausting. Does that make any sense? So unclutching is like a great default state, and it's very relaxing. And you know that when you need to, your mind will just go into gear. When it needs to, it'll happen naturally.
Yeah, and I like that approach. And for the listening audience out there, that, you know, especially the younger generation, there's not a lot of driving clutches anymore. It's pretty much, you know, the clutch of actually pushing in the pedals to shift the gears is what you're referring to. But we're a little bit older and a little bit more seasoned.
Well, no, I was. So can I just say, I was worried about that, because so my guru is Indian, right? And, you know, India has a lot in common with Britain, but a lot of Indians moved to the US. So I was thinking unclutching, and I was thinking, yeah, what's he talking about? And I realized eventually he was talking about stick shift cars, you know, but if you think about any piece of machinery where you've got cogs going together, right? And any piece of machinery, like a gearbox, if you pull those cogs apart, and then, it kind of feels a bit like freewheeling, right? You're not pedaling all the time. And life is naturally happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that's what you meant. I wanted to make sure I was understanding the unclutching, because like I said, the younger generations, don't drive a lot of. I remember driving when the clutch was 3 on a tree, where the clutch was actually up on the stick shift back in my early days of driving. But the visual is I think the visual is very important, because when you do unclutch, you're not in any gear. You're not engaged with anything. And sometimes you can actually, I remember we would be able to start the car by being in neutral, not being in gear, and then letting the clutch out, and the car could actually start. So, sometimes just coasting and going with "we are the flow," that is the flow. I think that's a good visual for the audience out there to be like, yeah, maybe I should just take a second. And I always refer to it as practice the pause. Take a step back, take that breath in, practice the pause, get that moment, even if it's just a few seconds of no thoughts at all, because science says we have on average about 50 to 60,000 thoughts that go through this osmosis of what we call the brain. The question becomes, are you thinking the same things over and over again, like Groundhog Day? Yeah. Or are you, like you said, unclutching or practicing the pause and disengaging from those thoughts, so you don't go down the rabbit hole, because then you get into the what if world. And we've learned a lot of times the things that we think 9 times out of 10 don't come to the way we think it's going to happen. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't even happen. So we just wasted all that thought and energy on thoughts. This is just, I'm going to unclutch and just observe and just, coast a little bit.
I've experienced that today. I mean, one thing I'm sure listeners can relate to this is you can spend all this time and energy analyzing the situation. And sometimes what we try and do is we try to make things happen to a timetable that we have dreamt up.
Yeah.
Right. That happens a lot.
Whereas if you unclutch,
because you think, you're trying to run your life with your mind. Whereas if you unclutch, like, you still take action. Like, I'm more active than I've ever been. But if you've dropped the expectation of what the timetable should be, frequently everything falls into place in a magical way that you never thought of. Like, nature has a way of orchestrating things in a way that your mind just can't keep up with.
Yeah.
Well, mine can't anyway.
Yeah, no, and that's why I say that nature is my church. Nature has, if you think about just nature as a whole, it's a great engineer, great healer, great guide, great wisdom and knowledge, all connected to nature. So that's why I always, when I'm going through a trying time in life, because life will go on, as Robert Frost was talking about, those 3 little words, life goes on. It doesn't ask us what we want, but we have to still navigate, and we have to still live, whether we're living with loss or, but getting out into nature can really change, because there's also the thing that we're not talking about, John, is the cellular connection. You talked about the cells, because, nature gives off a Wi-Fi signal. The trees, the plants, the mountains, there is a vibration there that we can connect into and resonate with. Yeah. So we are connecting to something. That's why I think the movie Avatar has done so well, because it talks about that connection to nature, because we're a part of that. That's why it's $1 billion industry. They've made three movies, and all of them have made over $1 billion worldwide, globally. So, for the listeners out there, if you're not sure where to go, well, start 1 by getting the book, but 2, you can get out into read the book Out in Nature. I did take your book along, just so you know why I said at the top of the mountain about how to move on with loss is very tough. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because we're going to run out of time. I could talk to you for hours, John. That's why we got to get to some of the points here, because we're going to run out of time. The other one that when I was reading through, you talked about how to get rid of those pain patterns, and you talked about you gave examples. You talked about your own sciatica with somebody that's had back surgery. I know that pain very, very well. It will put you down and take your feet from under you. But you also talked about your relationships, and you also talked about wealth. And there was one other thing here about in the book about how to get rid of those pain patterns, because I think people watching and listening later, they have a lot of pain in their life, and you can respond to that pain or not respond. That's your greatest superpower, right? Is not responding is a response. But talk about those pain patterns so people can maybe recognize those, and then
certainly. And by the way, every now and then I meet a multi-billionaire, and they've got pain patterns. Right? It doesn't matter how much money you have; they've still got them, right? So, but you can deal with them. So it's really simple. So most psychologists and psychiatrists agree that something bad happens in your early childhood, right? Something painful happens, and Swamiji he narrows it down to the ages of 2 and 7. So it starts at 2 because you need to be 2 years old to have any vocabulary. When you're 2, you start to have words, and that means you can come to conclusions and formulate beliefs, right? So let's take an example from the book. My earliest painful incident I can remember was at the age of 3. So my mother took me to have my hair cut. For the first time, I went somewhere else outside home to have my hair cut. And I wanted to play in the garden and whatever. Instead, she puts me in a chair and kind of straps me into the chair. And this man comes to cut my hair, right? And I'm kicking and screaming. And eventually, I made such a fuss that he cut himself, right? And we know all of this because we then have 10 years of photos with haircuts done by my mother. When I was going through this whole process, I realized that okay, when that happened, when I was 3, I came to some very important conclusions. One was, and I didn't necessarily articulate it in this way, but that's how I would describe it now, is I'm a powerless victim and life doesn't give me what I want. That's what Swamiji calls your root pattern. And he says that's the root pattern is the root of all your suffering, right? So I'm a powerless victim and life doesn't give me what I want. Now, fast forward and you're trying to be successful in your career or form a relationship or whatever. And if you have those beliefs, that's a major obstacle, right? And then another later one, when I was 6, an optometrist came to our school and did an eyesight test. And at the end of the test, he said, you're partially red-green colorblind. That means you can't join the army and you can't fly airplanes. So then I added some more. One was, I'm a failure. That was my first experience of failure. Again, life doesn't give me what I want. I want to fly airplanes, and this man's saying I can't. I'm unacceptable. Like the army won't accept me because I'm colorblind. And so you see, by the age of 7, you're cooked. You've got these 5 or 6 patterns running everything. And that's how most people are. It doesn't matter how successful or wealthy or whatever they are or beautiful. They've all got these patterns, right? And the technique is ultra simple. The technique is described in 3 words. It's relive to relieve. So you sit down quietly on your own. I wear earplugs and a blindfold, not blindfold, like those things you wear on airplanes, eye shade.
Yeah.
And I sit there and I count on the fingers of my hand so I don't lose, because your mind wanders, right? Sure. And I relive. So what happens is you relive the episode. Like imagine you're the protagonist, you're the main character in the movie. Like I become 3 again. I'm sitting in this chair. This man's trying to cut my hair. I'm kicking and screaming, feeling ultra frustrated. And I relive that experience over and over again, at least 5 times with my eyes closed, right? And then I do it again, talking to myself in the mirror at least 5 times. And if it's something fundamental like this, you can keep going back and doing it over and over again. And what happens is you feel all the pain and the frustration in your body, because this stuff's all stored in your body, right? Oh yeah. And then if you relive it intensely, exactly. And what happens is you relive it intensely and it gradually diminishes. And I've been through this many times. What happens is at some point it feels like an electrical charge leaving your body. It just goes. And then several things happen. In my case, as I mentioned, sometimes I can't remember what the pattern was. It becomes like a book in a library. If I go and look, I can remember what it was. Otherwise, it's redundant. Another thing I remember is, because I finished this process a year ago, is my mind went very quiet, right? Because the 5 or 6 lines of software aren't running anymore. Right. It's a bit like someone has switched the radio off, and suddenly the mind's very quiet. And then I thought, oh God, I need to be very careful what I think about, because what I think about manifests. Because you imagine you've got this inner space with these 5 bits of software running. If you delete that software, then things start manifesting very easily. So be very careful what you think about.
Yeah, and how much power that you have as a human being, that power of intention and your thoughts can become your reality. And I tell people all the time, my students as well, like, be careful for what you ask for because you may just get it. And so
Well,
if
you're
those
very
are
likely
positive thoughts, yeah, or negative thoughts, right? So you can
you're
attract
very
both.
likely. Yeah, and so there's a whole industry. I mean, I think the law of attraction really got going roughly 15 years ago, maybe a bit longer.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you're trying to do the law of attraction, but your inner space is still full of all this negative stuff, it's much harder. Once you clean out the negative stuff, I mean, yeah, you start attracting all kinds of things. And it's not just me. I mean, I have friends who've done the same thing, and they just say, well, I kind of think that would be nice, and it happens. So things start manifesting very easily. By the way, before we finish, there's another thing I want to mention, but that's how the complete, and what you're completing is the reason it's called completion is you had an experience, but you didn't complete it. You suppressed it. You suppressed the pain. And so what happens is if you complete it by reliving it, then you're allowing the pain to come out. Does that make sense?
It does.
And then you're complete.
You said relive to something.
Relive to relieve. So it's not remember, it's not reconcile, it's relive. Right. And then for any linguists, so it's called completion, as you may know. Completion is a Latin word. The Germanic word is whole. So it's you're becoming whole, you're healing. You have this wound and you're healing it. So now you're whole, now you're complete. Now things start happening much more easily. So that's one thing. And the other thing, just before we end, so there are 3 steps in the book. One is unclutching, the second one is completion, and the third one is surrender. Thank you. Third one is surrender. And what I described in the book is the Sanskrit word is Paramashiva, which means supreme consciousness, or you could call it the intelligence which is running the cosmos, whatever you want to call it. But basically, you're asking that to manifest through you. So instead of trying to control everything, I just say, I use the word Paramashiva, but you can say cosmic intelligence, whatever. Like, please manifest through me. And what happens is the most complicated situations get resolved because the cosmic intelligence does it all. So instead of my little brain trying to, I mean, I've done this. There are examples in the book when I've been traveling, or, my mother died, my girlfriend left, and I had to move house all at once. And the cosmic intelligence handled all of it. Yeah. I mean, my mind would have just overheated.
Yeah. But as you described it, it sounded like in the States, here we call that a country western song. My wife left, my dog left, I lost my house, everything.
That's right.
But see, this is why I take notes. Right? Yeah, this is why I take notes, because I diamonds like that, and that's what this show is about, is discovering and sharing the hidden diamonds and gems all around us, and to relive to relieve, right? Am I saying that right?
Yes.
So,
relive to relieve. Yeah.
Relieve. Yeah. Okay. And again, that surrender aspect. So, just taking those notes, because there's a lot to it. You can't see it off camera, but I've got a little shrine up here to my right, and it says at the top of my little shrine, it has a big plaque that says "Life happens," because life doesn't ask us what we want. It's about how we navigate through the power of mindfulness. And I would also say, you talked a couple of Sanskrit. One of the things I have, you'll appreciate this. This is a Sanskrit for breath, and I can show everybody now that, I have this as a reminder to just breathe along the way too. Don't forget about one of the most powerful things you have is your breath. So, John, it has been a pleasure talking with you, my friend. Congratulations on the book. Again, if you want to get the book, at the very end, we didn't get time to it, but he's got, 20 ways to manifest. There's some tips in here where you can actually start to apply manifesting tips. And that's what we're all about at Inspired Living, bringing actionable steps into your awareness, into your reality, so you can manifest and live your best life. And so before we wrap up, John, one of the things I like to do is ask my guests, who or what inspires you?
Oh, that's easy. So my guru inspires me. I mean, I've learned a lot from different people along the way, but he's an incarnation. So like Buddha, Jesus, Krishna. And actually, one thing which I never expected. The first time I met him, I went to learn completion, which was 11 years ago. And he initiated all of us to be healers. I have no medical training, and people have been healed of some pretty serious things through me, through my body. And what I've realized now is all I'm doing is basically transmitting healing. And people, what's hilarious is people get healed and then they have to look on Google afterwards to find out what it was.
Yeah.
But it all fits together, and it's all from the Vedic tradition, which is maybe 10,000 years old. So
yeah, and it all fits together, like you said.
Yeah.
We are the flow.
Yeah.
We have the ability to heal. You know, the gurus talked about the divinity within, the healing, and you don't need to go to a healer. You are the healer. So, John, thank you so much. It's been lovely chatting with you again. Thanks for coming back to Inspired Living, and keep inspiring. Keep keep writing. Keep doing your thing. And we'll have you back when you have a new book. But appreciate you, and you keep inspiring.
Thank you, Mark. There's a new book coming, so yeah.
All right, let us know, our friend. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for tuning into our first episode of Om Times Television with Inspired Living. I am your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, and I get to say this on camera. I never get to say this after 11 seasons, but be kind, be caring, be compassionate. Most importantly, wherever you're at in this world, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live. And I hope that you discover the diamond within, and that you discover all the many hidden gems that are all around us. And we'll see you next time here on Inspired Living. Take care, everybody.